The narrative of investor protection is often like a Trojan horse. We are like fighting a 2026 war with a 1934 playbook. Crypto didn't kill the dollar dominance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blockchain 100. I'm Jenny. Blockchain 100 is a Binance initiative recognizing the 100 voices genuinely shaping the future of Web3, creators, educators, builders, and this show is their platform. Today's guest has spent over 2 decades at the intersection of technology, finance, and governance. He first encountered Bitcoin in 2012 when most people still thought it was a joke. And since then, he has advised 20 governments on blockchain policy. He chaired a major exchange and written best-selling books and founded a nonprofit built on the belief that decentralization isn't about replacing institutions, but integrating them. His North Star, in his own words, is simple: for the people, by the people. Anndy Lian, welcome to Blockchain 100.
Hey, hi Jenny.
Hello. Very nice to have you here today. So before we start, I wanted to get to know a bit more about the man behind the title. So most people enter crypto chasing money, ideology, or even both. But you came into the space from like a completely different world. Spent years working with governments and institutions before getting into crypto. So like my question is, what actually got you here?
Well, I didn't come here for the ideology, to be honest, and certainly not here to fight the system. So I came here with a pretty pure mindset, is that I see that the global finance system should be doing a lot better, and it is kind of rusting, in my opinion. And because I work with different traditional finance, right when I was young, I worked with different government. I think that bureaucracy system, is not great. So when I got to know about Bitcoin first in the earlier days, and then I got to know about blockchain, I realized that could be a way to replace the legacy system, right? So that's why I believe that blockchain is going to change things and not doing it over and over again like what we did in the past, right? But of course, things have changed a lot, since I started back then. I still strongly believe that blockchain technology got to evolve into more tangible things, like getting the use cases back. I think if you look at 2017, we talk about use cases, right? And then when we talk about use cases, we try our very best to get new users, right? That kind of momentum, I think we should really try to bring it back, right? So that things can be more efficient and things can be a bit more sexy, right? Because if you talk to those crypto guys who came in early, like myself, some of them become like a Bitcoin maxi. And then they would think that, they got to wipe out the central banks, they got to remove the government. But I think that's very delusional, right? So what we should really, really do is to find a way to use some of the effort that is being done, convert them into tangible value back into the cryptocurrency and blockchain space. So that equates to getting more use cases, that equates to getting more people on board. And we have to change the environment. If we are not going to change the environment, then we will still be stuck, where we were back in 10, 20 years ago without the blockchain space.
And now you're constantly moving between also like governments and finance and crypto, these three. But I think these three, honestly, like they rarely agree on anything. My question is, when they disagree on like where crypto is going, which one do you think is the most wrong as of now?
I think without a doubt, in my heart, government is the most wrong, followed very closely by traditional finance. You can see that, and very obvious that government right now is still treating cryptocurrency like a finance crime syndicate, or maybe a speculative, uncontrolled casino that they can just tax it, ban it without thinking twice, right? If you look at the context right now, we are like fighting a 2026 war with a 1934 playbook. Right, tech builders understand how, finance understand the liquidity, but the government is still stuck at trying to feed decentralization, borderless liquidity into a centralized, rigid bucket. So I would say that maybe government needs better education now. And I think it is not just an education problem, but also they have a big control problem. So they need to exactly know what it is, what they want, and not just terrified about the monopoly of printing money and creating strange policies that is just going to kill themselves and also kill the industry, right? So I think government is the more naive and the more wrong one. That's also the reason why in 2017 or 2018 I choose to advise governments instead of going through the corporate enterprise route, because I don't really need the money, but I do believe that the DeFi industry is going to grow. So in order for it to grow, I have to advise the more naive ones, which is the government. So I started to give advice to government. So that's one of the reasons why I came into that scene in the government scene.
But have you ever told government something that, oh, this won't work, and then they just ignored you?
Always, So I always talk to the government in a very polite manner to tell them that, hey, what you are trying to do right now is not going to work. What you are going to do right now is just probably a photo op. Many of the politicians will say, oh, I'm here for the innovation. And then they're all very forward thinking. If you tell them they are wrong, it's not super nice. But if you tell them you are wrong because you are too forward thinking, it's also not nice. So usually I'll tell them, hey, it is actually wrong to just have a photo op. You need to do something more than the photo op. Not just a background with a blockchain or a background with a CBDC to show voters that you're tech savvy, right? So I usually use such a method to convince them and let them have a more comfortable way to agree to what I'm trying to tell them.
Have you ever been successfully, maneuvered what the government policy?
I would not say maneuver, right? But I always give them that scenario to look at the policy in a different manner. So if they are always looking at this from a policy making a standpoint, we will never meet in between. So I always use the value that is being created as the chatting point, right? And then once the value is met, they have their value met, I have my value met, and the crypto industry will also benefit from that change in mindset for some of these regulators. I think that would be a win-win-win for everybody. So yes, I always try to make them think from a more value standpoint and a more longer term standpoint.
Most crypto traders probably find out about government policy when it hits the news, but you've probably been inside these government discussions before the news exists. And does what you see in the government meetings ever make you want to change your own portfolio?
Of course. If that would affect my portfolio, and then I'll use that information to my advantage, that would be insider trading, right? But if I look at this more purely from an industry standpoint, how is that policy going to change everyone in the crypto space? For example, how they adopt the travel rule. I will give them different ideas, what are some of the gray areas that they will encounter? What are some of the gray areas that the users will adopt? And then from that, they will think about ways to have control and yet allow innovation to flow, right? So I would be really honest. I always wanted to slam the table and tell them that, hey, this is really shitty, because if you govern and make the laws in this manner, you will just be lose-lose. Right, so it goes back to the previous question that you have said. I always want a win-win situation, right? I always want to see regulators behind the closed door making sense. Because if you are really behind closed door talking to the regulators, many of them are actually pretty silly sometimes and pretty naive. And the not sanitized version, that we often see would really surprise many of you. So we often try to trash this out privately with the regulator, whether it's a consultancy a session or whether it's just closed door with the minister. We try to make sure that all these things are run through properly with the person in charge, so that they could give a better reply or maybe make a better decision, as time moves by.
And I guess markets also react quite differently from what policymakers intended. So in the last 12 months, which government decision had the biggest impact on crypto that most people completely just misread?
That's a tough one, man. I think most people in the last 12 months were just talking about Genius Act and Clarity Act. I think, right? Everybody is more US centric. But I think that obsession with US SEC decisions is not really that main dish. To me, I think what is really missing is the real shift happening in cross-border liquidity frameworks across Asia and Middle East, especially regarding the stablecoin licensing, because that is a thing that is really missing. Because if you are a trader, for example, you will be looking at the big headline, about US being crypto friendly, President Trump being pro crypto. But if you look really deep into some of these central bank monetary policies update, some can be 200-300 pages. That is that macro that many of the traders are missing, because they are all addicted to all the micro stuff that we see on the news, right? So my take is the stablecoin licensing and the stablecoin distribution in Asia and Middle East is something that is really not talked about too much.
For me, I guess the strange reality for me is that where government policy itself sometimes can become like a source of risk, right? Even though they talk about, they want to protect citizens from crypto risk, but a lot of risks actually come from their own decisions. For example, sudden bans or unexpected regulations or currency intervention. So who is actually protecting ordinary crypto holders from government risk?
Nobody is protecting them. All right, that is actually the hard truth, very hard truth. Right, so the narrative of investor protection is often like a Trojan horse for how the market works, right? It sounds nice, but then when the government can just explicitly ban an off-ramp or freeze a stablecoin rail, that causes more retail liquidation than a lot of these DeFi exploits that you can see in a year. Is protection really possible? I would think through real decentralization and maybe self-custody. That would be the best way for crypto protection to ever happen, right? This is for yourself. But if you look at the industry as a whole, I would think that centralized exchanges should be the policeman. We should not rely on government telling you what to do and waiting for the government to give you a regulation or a rule, right? What we should really do is from an industry standpoint, maybe right now, for example, the largest exchange is Binance, right? Binance should set the example and then lead the example. If we are talking about doing work, collaborating with the regulators, I think Binance did a very good job. But if you look at the future, what should really happen is that the exchange themselves should be the one that is policing the industry. The largest exchange should be setting the example, police the industry, set control measure so that we can all be in good shape, right? And that kind would be a more practical form of consumer protection, in my opinion. And that is a must. That is a big must.
And if we are talking about crypto, it's impossible not to talk about Bitcoin as well, right? I think at the same time right now, Bitcoin itself feels quite different from what it used to be. It used to be like the asset that moved differently from every other asset. But now it moves almost in lockstep with the stock market. So what do you think people are actually buying when they buy Bitcoin today?
I think right now, if you really think very hard, very, very hard, I think most of the institution buyers are treating Bitcoin as nothing much more than a tech stock plus. It is a high beta liquidity sponge. So when the Fed injects liquidity, Bitcoin pumps. And of course, when the market panics, Bitcoin dumps. That's alongside with NASDAQ. So the Wall Street suit and tie people kind of control Bitcoin via ETF. And with that money came the traditional finance correlation, right? So if you really want to feel and make crypto a bit more independent again, I think you need a pretty systemic risk in the traditional fiat banking system, and all the debt default. As long as the global finance system is heavily inflating but structurally stable, Bitcoin will trade like a tech asset. The day people buy Bitcoin not to make more US dollar, but because they are terrified that the US dollar wouldn't buy food, I think that would be the day where that correlation would just break permanently, right? So far, it is what it is, right? So I give you another example. If you look at the stablecoin, why US would agree to the Stablecoin Act is to fight their own inflation, right? Because all the US dollars are just floated outside of US. That is going to fight the inflation. If all the money goes back to US and US domestic, the inflation will be super high. So they encourage stablecoin pegged to US dollar or outside of US so that everyone can hold their US debt.
And I also feel like the shift of this like whole crypto and TradFi and whatever, it feels more intense in Asia. And if we speak about Asia, I think we have to talk about Korea because it's also often the first market where retail behavior goes extreme. So for example, some of the news that happened lately, right? Like the SK Hynix workers, they take home $500,000 bonuses, but then at the same time, Central worker, they're striking. There's so many things that happen in Korea. Meanwhile, Korean banks are moving into crypto and Korean exchanges are going public. And I believe that you have been inside the Korean blockchain committee room. So what does this all say about where Korea is actually right now?
All these riots and all these protests on the streets, you often see this in Korea. They're all very well organized. And all these Hynix workers and so forth, they got big bonuses because of the AI chip and the production that they have, right? But if you zoom it back to cryptocurrency, I think South Korea is the ultimate pressure cooker, right? You have extreme corporate wealth concentration alongside with younger generation that realize that working a 9-to-5 job, even with the conglomerates, would never allow them to buy a big apartment in Seoul, right? So that economic differences is where the kimchi premium exists. So crypto isn't a hobby in Korea, and it's more like maybe a social economic escape hatch for the young people. What's happening, there's always a preview and there's always a warning sign, not just a trend, right? When the wealth get widened to a certain point, retail behavior just go crazy, right? They would think that meme coins are good, maximum leverage on some of these altcoins are good. This is like Korea showing the world what happened when the economic or traditional economic promise breaks completely, right? So I see some of my friends in Korea going extreme, right? Highest leverage, gamble very big and so forth. I think it's not healthy. Right, so of course the government is going to put on more measures, in the crypto space by putting up tax, putting up all the different measures, but it's still a pressure cooker, man, in South Korea.
So you do agree if what's happening in Korea right now can be a preview of what every market will go through eventually?
Definitely, yeah. And if you look at Asia, I think South Korea is one of the first few with a good regulatory framework, and they are one of the fastest to adopt. But this will not change because by default, even before crypto era happens, South Koreans are already in that state, right? They are all trying to make it. It is what it is, man. The country is what the country is like way before.
And I find interesting about your perspective is also that you tend to notice adoption patterns before like industry narrative catch up. And you were also one of the first to notice the migrant workers in Gulf starting using stablecoins to send money home after the Iran war disrupted normal banking. And I guess most people in crypto completely missed that. How did you notice that?
I used to run finance businesses a lot, the Gulf area, the UAE and so forth. These are some of the core area that we often look at, right? So if you just look at how the Middle East, tightened because of the geopolitical conflict, it is very obvious that USDT on Tron is their preferred mode of transferring money. You can see that happening right before the current war. You can see that because it's cheap, it's fast. And places like Dubai, where there's a lot of foreign workers, it actually surprises me back then that USDT is their preferred currency, right? And then, of course, the quiet shift that is happening right now that most people are just ignoring is actually the de-dollarization of supply chain via all these private stablecoin in places like Africa, like Southeast Asia, and you will even be more surprised when you get the statistics that SMEs completely bypassing the SWIFT network to pay all their goods and services using stablecoin. And they are not doing it because they love Web3, but they are doing it because cryptocurrency is more efficient, right? But one of my friends who was taking a private jet on Monday, a few days ago, he told me that the pilot only accepts USDT. So this has become a very common thing right now, to be honest.
So now my question is, earlier you also said US is having this stable coin for a way of fighting inflation. And then you also talk about how people uses a stable coin to have their own financial freedom. So who does it actually serve more? The people using stable coin or America? Is it just giving America a more powerful version of dollar dominance?
I think from a retail standpoint, I think the stable coin give a lot more distribution. But if you look at the detail of how the stable coin denomination are like, most of them are pegged to US dollar, right? So I think crypto didn't kill the dollar dominance. In fact, cryptocurrency save it, right? It extends the reach of US dollar into unbanked corners of the world where the Fed Reserve couldn't never physically go, right? So who does it serve more? I think in the short term, it serves the migrant workers or the citizens suffering under 100% inflation, maybe like Argentina, for example, or Lebanon. It saves their livelihood every day. But in longer term, like I've mentioned, it serves as a US geopolitical machine by ensuring that even when people lose faith in their local government, they still can default to the greenback, which is the US dollar. I think is brilliant. At the same time, it can be also very damaging, right? But right now, in the shorter term, I think it's more. There are more pros and cons than to cons.
I use a lot of stable coins myself, traveling around the world. So I agree with you. And zooming out from crypto itself, I think Asia still feels like the battleground for the next internet era. A lot of people say Web2's Asian hub was China because look at Alibaba and all of it. And Web3 was Singapore and Hong Kong. They're fighting over the same crown. So when Web4 arrives, which Asian city do you think will win that race?
I think Singapore and Hong Kong is just playing a very sophisticated game of regulatory ping pong, right? They can be both too expensive and a little bit too sterile, right? But when you talk about Web4, we talk about AI agents, we talk about DeepIn, we talk about decentralized computing power. I think the real dark horse city would be Bangkok or Ho Chi Minh,
Really?
because it's actually pretty crazy. If you travel around a lot, you would realize that the smartest and the smartest developer and talent actually come out from Vietnam, right? And if you look at the cost and value creation, it definitely has a higher value than the developers that you can find in Singapore and in Hong Kong. So I still think Vietnam will be that dark horse, really. And you can see the other big thing that I often share is you can see Vietnam has a lot more younger people, right? So if you see a lot more young people who are vibrant and willing to work hard, that would be the next biggest city, You can't go to a place where everybody is old, everybody is so tired. You need some vibrancy. So Vietnam would be my choice.
But while cities and governments, they're competing for the future, ordinary workers are also starting to wonder, where do they fit into this Web3 world, right? So one of the biggest crypto exchanges just cut out 14% of the staff, replacing by AI. And one of the other biggest tech company also laid off 8,000 people the same week for the same reason. These aren't factory workers. They are like engineers who thought, well, they're safe. So what do you say to someone watching this thinking, am I next?
Well, let's put this in perspective, okay? So if you are an engineer, right, whose skill is more about keep trying to do the smart contracts and build the front end, I think that replacement by AI is definitely there because AI can write the code maybe in 3 seconds, while a human being can write this in a day, for example, right? So it boils down to how and what would the corporations do, right? So if the corporations are replacing the middle class with AI agents to maximize profit, I think they will ultimately destroy the consumer base that buy their products. Are governments really thinking about all these things behind closed door? I think they are actually pretty terrified. If you talk to different governments and so forth, they started to look at UBI, universal basic income, and then they start to look at how they can structure unemployment that is up and coming, right? But like for example, like Singapore government, they start to provide some AI courses for people to do retraining work, and that is a way to keep the citizen happy and keep the citizen abreast of what is AI all about, so that they will not be replaced by technology. Ultimately, I think AI coming into our space, taking over some of our job is definitely there. How do you make yourself valuable is to learn about AI. That is the key thing that I tell all my friends in the 40s and 60s, even 50s, some of my friends, they say, oh, AI is going to take over their job. Some of them are even lawyers, right? I say AI is definitely going to make your life easier and also at the same time make your life worse, right? Because now you need to do more work in a day compared to in the past, right? You can get a paralegal to do a lot of this research work and so forth. Now all you need to do is just go to AI, punch what you want, they give you the outcome. This means that you have to be more productive than before. So as long as you can keep up with the AI pace, you will not be replaced. That is what I told them.
And just a hypothetical question. If every company does this at the same time, who will be actually left to buy anything?
Maybe only left with Jensen Huang and his company. That's it.
Yeah. I think this is where I find crypto interesting, because crypto is built around removing like a lot of like intermediaries. And if AI can already trade better and analyze faster and spot opportunities before any human, so what is the actual role of a human in crypto 10 years from now?
I think the short answer is the human being role will shift from execution to curation and governance, right? So the human will set the parameters and define the ethical and risk boundaries while still holding on to the ultimate keys to the physical infrastructure. So we will be architects. I always say this to many of my friends, whether they are in AI or in crypto, I tell them that we will be architects and not builders, because you cannot outbuild AI, right? So you will be the architects. So if you try to compete with AI on speed and processing power, for example, then you have already lost the war, right? So we should be the one building the architect, not the one building the big bits and pieces, to where it is supposed to be.
And I guess like despite how fast everything moves now, and you have actually chosen a different path. You write books. You have written about blockchain, NFT, Singapore, and I believe that you just launched a new book about Web4. So why do you keep writing books?
Maybe I don't have anything to do, but that's not the point. So I always say that when we do a keynote speech, right? So when I did a keynote speech about Web4, if you are doing a keynote speech, to me, it's more for entertainment purposes, right? That 20-minute dopamine will just hit the audience, and then maybe sometimes I contribute to a government report. It's more like sharing your expertise, but writing a book is different, right? Because the book is a little bit more unfiltered, and it's also a permanent record of my own thoughts at a specific point of time. Honestly, writing book is not an easy thing to do. Like the book that I've written about Web4, I have about 23 versions. The earlier versions that I have about Web4, because my ideology is very straightforward. Web4 is the way forward because there's an AI element, but Web3 is just screwed up because it's not decentralized. In my earlier versions, I actually wrote down real scenarios of why Web3 is going to break down. And I actually named the companies and so forth, right? So how this thing is being controlled, how they're controlling it. That is even before bubble maps ever have appeared. Then as I slowly write the book, I realized that I'm actually doing like an expose, like a FUD, for all these projects. And then some of them are listed on big exchanges, So I kind of reframe it and then make it into a little bit more, maybe more academic, so that I can bring my idea across to more people and more people understand what I'm trying to say. So that's why a book is actually the best way for me to share what I have in mind, and definitely a lot more than what I can share on the Twitter timeline. Because right now, if you put 300 pages on Twitter, I think Elon Musk is going to ban me. I still want to voice out, so a book is still the best.
And you said you have 23 versions of this book. You probably spent years rewriting it again and again, nights and weekends, while you're also simultaneously advising governments and managing investments. So what did that cost you personally, or have you offended anyone by writing something about them in the book?
Writing the book is an enjoyment, right? Mm-hmm. That's the reason why I kept changing from versions to versions, right? I even toyed the idea of using AI to write the book, but it's not successful because it looks really crappy, So the only thing that I think I should have done back then is to publish it as quickly as possible, because to me, time is actually more expensive than the effort that I've put in. So if you just imagine, when I first written the book, there's no Claude. But then because I actually dragged the book for years, now I need to talk about Claude. I need to talk about maybe ChatGPT 5.5, where in the beginning it was just maybe a ChatGPT 3 or something. So I think time, man. I should have written it very quickly and then try to just publish it as fast as I can. Instead of just thinking and thinking and thinking. Think too much is a bad thing.
So after all those years researching and rewriting, what is the one thing that you would hope readers leave with?
I hope that they will understand that decentralization is the future, right? If you really want to have a more sustainable financial system, I think decentralization is the way to go. If you love crypto, decentralization is the way to go, and we shouldn't compromise. If we want to build something decentralized, then we have to make sure it's decentralized. I think that is the main thing. If human being cannot make the decision, let AI do the thinking and let AI make the decision. Because whenever human being like ourselves make any decision, there's definitely some governance issue, or there's definitely some form of corruption, some corruptive thoughts, how we can benefit. If we really want to build a decentralized future, I think Web4 is the way to go, because we should be the architects and let the AI be the brains and be the execution party, right? So that things can be more fair, right? We provide architect for them to run on the internet. The rest of the things, if we want to make it more fair and with a stronger governance, I still think that AI should play a much bigger role than what it is right now. Because I want to just repeat this again, Web3 is not decentralized. Many of our friends who say that Web3 is decentralized by code. But if you look at the more recent incidents from, I don't want to name all these people, it's not. Because all the code, although it's decentralized, the human beings still hold the ultimate key, and they can actually stop transaction, change transactions. Is no difference from what the central bank is doing right now, right? So in order for us to do that, we really need to be real decentralized.
And I think in crypto, education and hype, it can look exactly the same from outside, right? Have you ever promoted something that you later regretted?
For someone like myself who has been here for so long, if I say no, I'll be a damn liar, right? So I think in the earlier days, we are all blinded by the potential of the technology, and we often overlook the human greed factor. So we always thought that, that protocol is brilliant, and without realizing the founders are going to turn that multi-million-dollar project into a rug pull. I try to stay clean, for myself. I try to stay clean. I don't want to pitch projects. I don't want to give financial advice. I analyze the structure, infrastructure, the policy, and the macro trend. In the past, I still have an investment company. We just use that investment thesis as the way forward. Right now, for myself, I just relax, man. Like the Bitcoin dropped to 73,000, for example, just now 72,000. I just short. If I need to long it later on, I'll just long it, right? So I don't want to have any regrets per se from an investment standpoint. From an industry standpoint, I still hope to see leaders stepping up. Whether it's a centralized exchange or whether it's a wallet, they should start to do all the different policing so that the rest of the retail guys will be better protected and will invest without regrets.
And I think ultimately that becomes much bigger conversation about maybe power. And if AI ends up in the hands of the same few companies that control Web3 or Web2, does Web4 just make them more powerful than ever?
Yes. So if the compute power and maybe the foundational AI model remain in a centralized manner, maybe with some of the big companies like Microsoft, Google, I think things will not change, right? Because Web2, to be honest, store your data. Web3 try to be decentralized. I think Web4 will help to predict and change that behavior. So the only solution to all this centralized AI would be decentralized Web4 protocols, right? You use the cryptography technology to verify data integrity, come up with better tokenomics to democratize compute power, look at open source model to break the corporate monopolies. So to me, it's not just a technology race, it's also a way to look at freedom of money.
And I believe it has come to the end of our interview. But before we close, I would love you to ask the Binance Square communities one question directly.
Okay, let's do it. So if tomorrow there is a country that is going to offer you a fully tax-free, frictionless life with zero inflation, but the catch is that you must use their centralized CBDC and money, and you give up 100% of your transactional privacy, would you take that deal, or would you choose financial privacy if it means staying poorer?
This is by far the most fun question I've ever got. I don't even know what I would respond. Thank you, Andy.
Remain poor. I think that would be the way.
Is that your answer?
Maybe.
We'll find out. Thank you, Andy. You spent years inside government rooms, inside financial system, inside markets, but you still approach this industry with curiosity instead of just certainty. And I think, honestly, that's probably a perspective that this space still needs more of right now. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Jenny.
And thank you, everyone, for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, stay tuned for more conversation like this one on Blockchain 100. And we'll see you next time.